Hey, good morning. It is Wednesday, December 10th. I'm Vincent Fanvan, and this is Always Booked Live. This is your daily briefing to keep your calendar and your pipeline always booked. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down a major tech policy shift that could affect how you use AI in your business, why the AI boom is hitting faster than anything that we've ever seen before, and a pricing strategy that's quietly changing what your clients pay online. Whether you run a med spa, an online coaching practice, a B2B consultancy, or agency, these are the stories that really matter for how you compete in 2025. But first, every state has different AI rules, and that's about to change this week. Let's start with breaking news out of Washington that could reshape the service business adoption and deploying AI. President Trump has announced that he'll sign an executive order this week to preempt state AI regulations, creating a single federal framework, and the executive order aims to establish a unified national standard for artificial intelligence regulations. This is going to block individual states from creating their own AI compliance requirements. And according to the New York Times, Trump has framed the move as necessary to prevent what he calls a patchwork of 50 different rule books that would burden small businesses and stifle innovation. So states like California, like New York, like Colorado, like Florida have passed or they've proposed AI transparency laws that require businesses to disclose when they use automated decision-making for things like hiring, credit scoring, or even customer service. And so under the proposed federal framework, the Department of Commerce would oversee AI standards, focusing on voluntary industry guidelines rather than mandatory compliance. And this order would actually task the Small Business Administration with creating resources to help companies under 500 employees adopt AI without necessarily needing dedicated legal teams. And so critics argue that this move actually removes important consumer protections, particularly around algorithm bias and data privacy, while supporters say that it'll actually level the playing field for businesses that operate across state lines. Let's take a look at what one state, Florida, is.
We're going to be proposing, and we're going to work with the legislature to establish an artificial intelligence bill of rights for individual Floridians in our state. This will be very far-reaching with consumer protections. It will do things like fortify some of the protections we have in place for things like deep fakes. We are also going to make sure that your data is protected.
And so joining us today to chime in on these new AI regulations, Stephen Corson, founder and executive coach at Life Builder, and Spencer Donaldson, CEO and founder of Captive Demand and FirstFuture.ai. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us today. You help busy professionals and entrepreneurs eliminate distractions while gaining clarity. With these federal AI regulations potentially preempting state laws, how do you think business owners should think about the difference between clarity and compliance and the trade-offs when deciding to adopt AI into their tool set today?
Yeah, personally, I'm a big fan of this. We need a federal regulation because if not, it's actually going to hurt small business owners, because if you want to expand your business into different states, there's no way that you as a small business owner are going to be able to figure out, well, what complies with Florida laws and then what complies with Georgia. I mean, can you imagine having to create a similar framework for social media? If I posted a video, but I knew that video had to be formatted a certain way, or I couldn't say certain things, otherwise people in half of the states wouldn't be able to see it. Like, there's no way that I would be able to keep up with that. So I think that this is a good move. Obviously, they need to get it right. The guy who's in charge of this stuff, David Sachs, I have been following him for a long time. He's probably one of the most qualified people to put that together. So I do trust him to come up with a framework that makes sense. I like to see what my governor is trying to do with the data protections, but I just don't think the states thing makes sense for small business owners. But the one thing, regardless of what they end up doing, I think that's going to be really important for small to medium businesses to pay attention to is to make sure that whatever your strategy is for using AI, that it's not just some willy-nilly patchwork strategy, but that it is clear, it is well thought out, and it is communicated throughout the organization. And I think that it would probably even help if you go next level and you actually communicated what that's going to be to your customers. Because like we were talking about a little earlier, the difference between reality and, what is an AI generated video is going to be virtually indistinguishable in the next 6 to 12 months. We will not be able to tell the difference, even if you're looking at tiny little details. So I think that just being very clear on this is what our policy is, this is how we are going to use AI in our organization, and communicating that internally and externally is really going to separate all these different businesses as we grow and learn together in this crazy AI world that we're entering.
Yeah, I can definitely see that today. Like for today in my business, like when I hire employees in different states, the amount of work that I have to do to be able to hire into that state is absurd. It's extra, licenses that I have to apply for, extra paperwork that I have to apply for, different laws that I have to file in those different states. And, that's essentially the argument that Trump is making here, in his Truth Social post about having one rule to be able to rule it all. I could also see a world where AI companies have to move slower when they have to follow the policies of all 50 of these states. And, make no mistake, like we are in a national security race with China right now. At the same time, like the key part of what you said that is so important, though, is like it has to be done right. Like I think all of us can take a look at social media today, and the lack of regulation as social media grew is what caused our teenagers today to be addicted to social media, is what is causing, an epidemic of depression, where inside of Meta's own researchers acknowledged that users that use Instagram are more depressed than people who are not using Instagram, more likely to commit suicide. And so the big question there is like, how do we get it right? And, in the environment that we're in today, the reality is like, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle that you're on. You look at Congress, we have an inability to be able to govern today. And I think that's shown by the most recent shutdown that we had. Like, what would you say to this is going to result in almost no regulation?
Yeah, well, one of the most disappointing things that I've seen in recent history when it comes to the government is the fact that we couldn't pass the daylight savings time bill, for crying out loud. I mean, can you find like a piece of legislation that we,
I'm so
as
done
Americans,
with that.
could not?
Like you talk about Arizona. Come on, Arizona. What's going on here? Like daylight savings, not half the you're on the same time zone as the rest of the country for most of the year, but then not part of the year. This is the perfect example of like state regulation sucks.
It's like, okay, well, wait, are they 2 hours behind me in Florida? Are they 3 now? Like, I can't keep up with this stuff. So it's like they passed that. I think it was unanimously in the House, and then Congress didn't even end up voting on it. And it's like, come on, guys, like if we can't get that done, and that just goes to the problem with, polarizing, we need different sides of the aisle. Democrats need Republicans, Republicans need Democrats. I would argue we need more independents in there. Okay. But at the end of the day, the further that the polls, the extremes move away from each other, the less that's going to get done. And at the end of the day, that's just bad for the people. So it's on us to be voting in more moderate, more agreeable politicians for our parties instead of reaching for these extremes.
Yeah, it's those moderates. Spencer, jumping over to you. Captive Demand specializes in AI-powered marketing automation. With a federal AI framework potentially replacing state-by-state rules, like how do you see this affecting the way that marketing agencies and services deploy AI, whether that's for lead generation, whether it's for email automation, whether it's for customer engagement? We kind of have a peek of this and like what it looks like already in the privacy rules and what you can do on text messages or not text messages in the state of California with CCPA.
I mean, I would much rather this right now, because it is a patchwork of regulation and there's no point to have it. It's kind of like the CBD and THC industry have followed this. Like you don't know who's doing what in each state. We work with some CBD companies. It's really hard to make heads or tails in each state what the regulation is. So this is going to make our lives a heck of a lot easier to figure out what we can and can't do. So I think we'll be able to do a lot more with AI, but I think what comes down to is, I think a lot of this is, there's nefarious actors using it. If you're using it for good and using it in your operations, and disclosing that you're utilizing it, you're good. And I think that's the framework everyone should be thinking about this in, and you'll get around any regulation. It's when you're going to use it nefariously, when you're going to hide that you're using it, that you're going to run into issues with the regulation. So to me, it just makes things a heck of a lot easier. We all know the state governments don't move fast enough. The federal government doesn't even move fast enough to regulate AI. So I still have concerns that we're going to be regulated appropriately because the people at the head of this don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's right. And I mean, like the conversation that we're not even having right now is the impact on white collar jobs and unemployment. Like if you think the disruption from manufacturing moving overseas has had an impact on the employment and the labor market in the US, like we haven't seen anything yet as it comes to the replacement of white collar jobs. Companies like Verizon laying off 15,000 workers, companies like Amazon, companies like Walmart even saying that every single role inside of the company is going to be impacted by AI. And so, next question, Stephen, you've worked with clients at Salesforce, at companies like Gartner, you've dealt with complex technology decisions. For a business owner who's overwhelmed, doesn't have time to become an AI expert right now, like they're just trying to serve their customers, and they're dealing with being able to hire, they're dealing with the tariffs and the impact that those are having on their business. Like what advice would you give to them when they look at AI and they're just like, I just don't need one more thing. Like, should I use AI to do this, or should I just keep doing it the same way we've always done it?
This is a question I'm working with, with all of my executive clients, my founders, anybody like that. They're asking this question. There's a very simple framework that anybody can use. And AI is actually just a part of this. You can use this for anything. I call it the 3 Ds of prioritization. And that just stands for do, delegate, and delete. So anytime that you as a business owner, as an executive, a leader, need to kind of evaluate all of these different things that are constantly getting thrown at you and get clarity on what are the things that I need to be doing to move the needle, you need to remember those 3 Ds: do, delegate, delete. Normally, what ends up happening is 60 to 70%. If you were to write out on a piece of paper everything that you need to do, 60 to 70% of that you actually need to be doing. Then when you look at something like Dan Martell's buyback rate, when you evaluate how much your time is actually worth, you look at your effective hourly rate, as they call it, then what you will find is there are things that are not worth your time. And normally anything that is 25 to 50% of your effectively hourly rate needs to be delegated, okay? Then that normally falls into about 20 to 25% of anything that you are currently doing right now. You have to delegate that in order to free up space so you can double down on the things that do move the needle and then take on new things that will grow the business. And then normally there's easily 5 to 10% of things that you can totally delete that you are doing right now that actually aren't making a difference at all. And that's the sweet spot. So how does this translate into the AI stuff? Well, traditionally, whenever we're dealing with business owners, when they think about that second layer, delegate, normally what we think about is, okay, I need to pass this off to one of my employees. I need to go hire a third party to do this, bring on a freelancer, whatever the case is. But what I'm telling all of my executives and my business owners is that you need to put AI in that delegate bucket. You need to look at it and say, is there a tool that can automate either entirely or partially what it is I'm doing? And that, like, there's so many things that are constantly coming out, that are able to take on a lot of the things that we would do for something like that. So that's just a simple framework that any leader can do, that do, delegate, delete framework. And then anything that's falling in that delegate bucket, instead of just thinking of a person or an agency, throw in the robots and be like, hey, can I use AI to be able to totally delegate and automate this process?
And that's a great conversation to have next. Gentlemen, we'll see you back here right after the next story. Let's talk a little bit about like that automation that Stephen's talking about and the AI agents that are really happening and coming up. So like number one on this story, takeaway for small business owners, if you're using AI for appointment reminders, for lead qualification, to review responses or client intake, this matters. And up until now, you might have needed to check state by state regulations and rules. If you've served clients and like if you have somebody coming in the chat on your website, how are you supposed to know even what state that they're in? So a single federal standard does simplify that, but it also means less oversight. So for local service businesses like med spas, like fitness studios, this could make it easier to roll out AI-powered tools without having to worry about compliance headaches in different markets. For B2B firms, for agencies that are serving clients nationally, it removes legal friction. But here's the key. Just because something is federally allowed doesn't mean that your clients will trust it. If you're automating client-facing processes, transparency transparency still wins. So you want to make sure that your CRM, your booking system, your client portal clearly communicates when AI is involved. And consider how a mobile app or a client portal for your clients that, something that they can actually trust, can give you control over the experience instead of relying on third-party platforms. Still to come, why AI adoption is moving faster than anything that we've ever seen before, what this means for services, businesses that are trying to keep up. AI is being adopted 15 to 60% faster than the internet. That's crazy. And most services businesses are still on the sidelines. So let's turn to a story that explains why for a moment this feels different and why the services businesses that move now actually have a massive advantage. The New York Times published an analysis showing that AI adoption is happening at a pace that we've never seen before. It's dwarfing the .com boom. And unlike in the late 90s, though, when businesses slowly built websites and they experimented with e-commerce, AI tools are being adopted at breakneck speeds across different industries. And the difference really comes down to infrastructure, the internet that's required to build entirely new networks, training users, creating online payments. That all had to get built from scratch. But AI, by contrast, plugs into existing tools that businesses are already using. These are tools like CRMs, like email platforms, scheduling tools, client portals. And so the Times cites research showing that generative AI tools like ChatGPT reached 100 million users in just 2 months, compared to the 4 years that it actually took Google to hit that same milestone. And for business adoption that's happening even faster, software companies are embedding AI into existing platforms. Think about things like automated follow-ups in HubSpot, AI-generated email subject lines in MailChimp, predictive booking tools and suggestions in Calendly. That means that service businesses don't necessarily need to replace their tech stack. They just need to turn these features on. But the speed cuts cut both ways. The article warns that businesses that are delaying actually risk falling behind to competitors. And those businesses that are using it faster are going to book more appointments, get a personalized client experiences at scale. The gap between the early adopters and the laggards is widening pretty quickly. And unlike the .com era, there's really no time to wait on this. So let's take a look at what Bill Gates said about whether he thinks we're in an AI bubble or not.
On that topic, I also asked him if he is worried about whether we are in an AI bubble. Here's what he had to say.
We need to define bubble. If what we mean is like tulips in the Netherlands, that they eventually looked back and said, what the heck, there was nothing there. Those were just tulips. No, that's not where we are. If you mean it's like the internet bubble, where in the end, something very profound happened. The world was very different. Some companies succeeded, but a lot of the companies were kind of Me Too, fell behind, burning capital companies. Absolutely, there are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends.
So let's bring back our guests here. So welcome back, Stephen Corson, founder and executive coach at Life Builder, Spencer Donaldson, CEO and founder at Captive Demand and Future.ai. Stephen, you coach clients today on making rapid progress in 30 days. Now, given that AI adoption is happening 15 to 60 times faster than the internet boom, what advice would you give to a business owner that already feels like they're already behind and doesn't know where to start with this AI?
Yeah, don't try to swallow the ocean. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is the mistake most leaders are making that I'm seeing whenever I'm working with them is they're getting a lot of advice. Hey, you need to use AI here. We need to automate this process. We need to do this. We need to do that. At the end of the day, there's a really simple way that leaders can decide what they need to focus on in order to make rapid progress in this. And what they need to do is you always start with the destination in mind. You look at your goals. What are you trying to accomplish in your business? Then what you do, once you have clarity on that, it's like, okay, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Then you look at the things that really move the needle towards that the most. It's like, okay, this is what is going to help me reach this goal for the business the fastest. Then you evaluate that one thing, the thing that is the most important needle mover for you. And you go, how can we utilize AI to accelerate this process, to get more effective results, whatever the case may be, and just focus on one thing. The problem is not that leaders are incompetent or they can't figure it out. It's that they try to do too many things all at once. And just simplify it, focus on doing one thing excellently and figuring out how that works in your strategy.
Spencer, you've built and exited Inc. 5,000 companies, and now you run a next-gen AI marketing firm as well that merges human creativity with AI. Given how fast AI adoption is happening compared to the internet boom, what's the biggest mistake that you've seen businesses make as they try to bolt AI onto their existing company instead of really thinking about it strategically?
I think the biggest thing is a lot of the companies that we deal with haven't really figured out the process or workflow. You have to understand and go back to the drawing board and figure out, like, do I have a good process here? And then build it into the workflow, into the process, versus trying to bolt it on like a widget one at a time. And so I think process evaluation is the step that most people miss, and starting the thinking process at the beginning and going to the end of where you want to be, of the goal that you're trying to hit. And I think that's the biggest thing we're seeing, is just like bolting on a random tool on an inefficient process is not going to help you in the long run.
I love that. Real quick, Ed, just to add to that, there are three things that every business is made up of: people, process, and technology. Whenever things go wrong, the fastest things that we blame are the people and the technology, when usually it's the process. So if you're trying to figure that out, guess what? There's a tool that's really great at helping you figure out what your process is and where there's holes in it. It's called AI, ironically.
So if AI can automate tasks that used to take hours, like, how do you think leaders should think about reinvesting that time? Or like, are you just taking the headcount off the table and you're taking that as a cost efficiency savings?
I think it's a combination of both. Seeing what you need. I think it does make you more efficient, so you can do a lot of things that you weren't doing before. But it's understanding, like, a lot of the executives we deal with don't really understand how their team members are utilizing AI. So I think it's having a good understanding of what your team is doing every day, how they're integrating it into the workflow, and then figuring out where they can spend the time most efficiently. That's being clear on your goals, though. What your goals are and how you hope to grow is important in the process, and making sure that the team's working on those goals is very important. But a lot of executives right now are just ignoring the AI, and a lot of the team members are utilizing it. So figuring out what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis is important.
Stephen, you've worked at companies like Gardner, which obviously advises technology startups for technology strategy for enterprise clients. When you look at the speed of AI adoption, like, what's the difference between the companies that are successfully integrating AI into their culture versus those that buy the tools but really don't get the most out of them? And like, what's the biggest behavior shift that has to happen, or cultural shift that has to happen inside these companies?
So I'm seeing two different approaches to AI, which are interesting, and we'll see which one ends up being the winning strategy. I think they both can work. The first one is that you have a top-down approach. So you have executive leadership coming in and saying, this is an area in marketing or in sales or in IT, wherever it is, that we are going to start adopting this AI tool. This is something that we're going to do, whatever that looks like. And then they integrate it from the top down. It's an executive decision. The other is the total opposite. It's a bottom up approach, which is, a way to move a little bit faster. And what they're doing is they're enabling their teams and local leaders. So your director of marketing, your, director of finance, to say, hey, you guys go out, find the tools that you want, find the tools we are giving you, trusting you as a leader of that division to go out and find the tools that are going to work best for you. And then, don't sign anything long-term, test them out, see what you like, and then report back to us, the leadership team, and then we'll look at scaling it throughout the enterprise. So I'm seeing two different approaches there. My gut tells me in the long term, the ones that will end up playing out the best are the ones that, again, have the best process to it. So, again, there's going to be the technology we know is just going to get better and better and better at an exponential rate. The people, as long as you have the right people in there and you trust their decision making, then all right, that's going to end up happening. Change management is going to be a huge part of it. So that's all process oriented. So I think during this time, it's just going to be that much more important for leadership, whether you take that top down approach or that bottom up approach. You have to have a tight process for it, especially in larger enterprise organizations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. I mean, I'm generally a buy it annually, take the 20 to 30% cost savings on the software kind of guy. But Spencer and I know we've had this conversation. Is like the tools add up quickly, but they also change so frequently. I mean, we,
It's a huge
just had
part
a
of it.
Thanksgiving weekend where before Thanksgiving, I mean, it was Claude Code and ChatGPT all day long, and then Gemini 3 Pro comes literally out of nowhere on a holiday week, and now we turned and implemented Gemini 3, and it literally happened in like a few days. Spencer, you've scaled operations across multiple ventures, everything from meal delivery to real estate to marketing agencies. When you take a look at companies that are pulling ahead during this AI boom versus those that are falling behind, like what's the operational difference that you're seeing? And if it is the technology, the leadership mindset, is it like something else entirely different?
No, I think it comes down to the mindset. We're seeing like a break off here in a lot of the people in business, and especially when it's medium size or smaller businesses. We're seeing some people have an aversion to AI and saying, "Hey, we're not going to use it all. We would like to communicate to the customers that we're not using it." So we've seen that approach, and then we've seen people who are all in on it. And I think there's a middle ground approach. It's testing things, rolling them out slowly, figuring out what's working, using the AI inside of your operations internally before you roll it out to your customer base or anyone that's outside facing. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is use it internally for your own purposes. Start slow, test the tools yourself. I really like the bottom up approach. I think that makes the most sense, because it's really hard for an executive to dictate what the end user is going to find value in, especially when things are moving so fastly. So I think the biggest thing is just finding a middle ground approach. Don't go all in on it. Be a little bit skeptical of it. And that's the best approach you can take.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of like the person that's closest to the actual work more than likely is going to be the one that can actually write the prompt, engineer the prompt to be able to get it done. Now that, doesn't precede though like a cultural shift of being able to give that person access to the tools, taking a look at how your company data, how your client data is actually being fed into some of these tools, and whether that aligns with your privacy policy or whether you need to do an update to your privacy policy terms of service. But 100% right there, like when you have the top down direction, oftentimes like then it's theoretical, and where the rubber hits the road is where this AI is actually interacting with customers. But the other point that I love that you're bringing up is like that human in the middle. The AI can write a really great first draft for you, and you can always put a human in the middle to be able to polish that draft before it makes it to your customers. And if you're in an industry that's highly regulated today, or you're in a space where there's very little room for error, you can always have AI be that first draft and then put a human in the middle of the process as you take a look at how to optimize it. Stephen, Spencer, thank you so much. Stephen Corson, founder of Life Builder, Spencer, CEO and founder of Captive Demand First Future. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. So what's the takeaway for small business owners here? What this means is that in practical forms, if you're running an online coaching business and your competitors are using AI to be able to do things like instantly qualify leads, like personalized onboarding sequences and following up with clients who, might be ghosting you, they're going to book more sessions, and they're going to be able to do that with less effort. If you're a B2B agency, a consultancy, and your competitors use AI to analyze client data and surface upsell opportunities automatically, they're going to grow faster than you, even if they have the same team size. So for local services like salons or IV therapy clinics, AI-powered review requests, rebooking reminders, waitlist automation, these are the types of things that can fill your calendar without necessarily adding additional headcount. And the key here is integration, not experimentation. You don't want to bolt on AI onto the side of your business. You need to embed it into your client experience. And that's where a platform like Viton Apps really starts to make sense. Instead of juggling 5 different tools with 5 different AI features, you want to centralize everything into one branded app, one single client portal that your CRM already powers. And this way your clients get a seamless experience, and you get AI working in the background to be able to keep them engaged and coming back. We're going to move on to story number 3 here, which was something that I was really surprised about. So let's wrap up with a pricing story that shows how AI is quietly changing what your clients pay, even when they don't know it. Same grocery grocery store, but same item, but your clients might pay 20% more if they order through an app. This is a story from the New York Times investigation that reveals how algorithmic pricing is actually reshaping what consumers pay and why service businesses need to pay attention if they're thinking about how to price their main offering. The Times found that Instacart uses algorithmic pricing to charge different customers different prices, even when they're buying the same product from the same store. These pricing variations are as high as 20%, and the pricing depends on factors like order history, location, time of day, whether a customer is a repeat user or whether they're a first timer. Instacart says that this model optimizes for, quote, demand, availability, and delivery costs, but the result is that two people ordering the same gallon of milk from the same store can actually see two different prices when they go to check out. And this is not unique to grocery delivery. Dynamic pricing that's powered by AI is spreading across travel, it's spreading across ride sharing, event tickets, even professional services, because this technology allows businesses to maximize revenue by charging what each customer is willing to pay rather than a fixed price. And for consumers, though, that feels a bit opaque and it feels a bit unfair. For businesses, it's a powerful lever. It's one that comes with reputational risk if the customers find out. But this Times article has highlighted a growing backlash, particularly with price-sensitive customers who feel like they're tricked when they discover that somebody else paid more than they did. So consumer advocates are calling for transparency rules, while companies are arguing that personalized pricing is no different than offering coupons to some customers, but not to other customers. This is a quote that was in the New York Times. One shopper compared two Instacart accounts ordering from the same store, and they found a $7 difference on a $35 order. That's a 20% markup with no explanation at all. So if you're a service business owner, what does this mean for you? First, you need to take a look that your clients are becoming hyper aware to pricing inconsistencies. They're going to be comparison shopping now more than ever. And so if they suspect that you're charging them more than somebody else, this really erodes trust very quickly. And that's especially true for local service businesses like med spas, salons, clinic, where word of mouth really matters. And second, if you're considering dynamic pricing or tiered offers, transparency is your friend here. Online service businesses like coaches, course creators, membership communities, you can absolutely use AI to personalize offers, but you want to show your work. Explain why a returning client gets a loyalty rate, why an early bird pricing strategy might exist for somebody else. B2B firms, agencies, consultancies already do this well with value-based pricing, but the lesson really holds here. Clients are going to tolerate variation, but only if they understand the logic. And finally, you want to think about where you control the pricing conversation. If your clients book through a third-party marketplace or an aggregator, you might lose pricing power there, but you can control this through your own app. If you have your own client portal, you can provide a much different experience here. And this is really where the Instacart strategy went off of the rails. And so you can offer transparent pricing through membership tiers. You can do loyalty rewards. You can do personalized offers. And you could do all of that without a middleman algorithm that's undercutting the trust. And so another story that's happening right now, banks are betting big on AI, but they're cutting jobs to be able to pay for it. Major US bank executives have told investors this week that AI will boost productivity, but this leads to job cuts, according to Reuters. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, already said that AI is handling routine tasks like fraud detection and customer inquiries, reducing the need for entry-level analysts. For service business owners, the takeaway is pretty clear. If financial institutions are using AI to do more with fewer people, your clients can expect the same efficiency from you, whether that's instant responses, whether it's automated reminders, or whether it's self-service bookings. AI agents just went from experimental to essential, and businesses are deploying them right now. AI agents now are capable of handling multi-step workflows like booking appointments, sending follow-ups, updating CRMs, and these are really no longer in beta, according to the Agent Store's Business Automation Roundup. Companies are using them to automate intake forms, quality control on leads, and managing customer service without human intervention. So if you're still manually chasing your no-shows, if you're still copying data manually from one system to another, you're really starting to compete against businesses that don't have to do this. Small business optimism is up, but only because owners expect better sales, not easier operations. The NFIB's November Small Business Optimism Index inched up, driving improved sales expectations. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. But hiring remains hard and costs are still elevated. So most owners say that day-to-day operations really are not getting easier. So what's the silver lining here? Silver lining is if you can deliver predictable revenue and streamline your client experience now, you're positioned to be able to capture the upside when the sentiment fully turns. Now, next story, and your clients this year are spending $890 this holiday season, even paying hidden fees on every single swipe. The National Retail Federation projects that consumers will spend an average of $890 this holiday season, but a significant chunk of that actually goes to credit card swipe fees and merchants passing this fee along. That's according to digital transactions. Now, for service-based businesses, this is a reminder to evaluate payment processing costs, especially if you're still paying 3% per transaction. You want to offer direct payment options, whether that's through your own app or whether that's through a client portal. Using things like ACH can actually save you thousands of dollars annually. That's Always Booked Live. I'm Vincent Fanvan. We're going to be back here tomorrow with the news and ideas that keep your calendar and your client relationships always booked. If you want to see what a Viton mobile app or a client portal can look like for your business, head to Viton.com. That's VYTEN.com and grab your free strategy session today. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.